The first book of Moses, Genesis chapter 38. Came to pass at the time that Judah departed from his brothers and visited a certain Adullamite whose name was Hirite. And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he married her and went into her. So she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name She conceived again and bore a son. She called his name Onan. And she conceived yet again and bore a son, and called his name Shelah. He was Shebeb when she bore him. He was at Shebeb when she bore him. Then Judah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord killed him. And Judah said to Onan, "Go in to your brother's wife and marry her and raise her up as an heir to your brother." But Onan knew that the heir would not be his, and it came to pass, when he went in to his brother's wife, that he amended on the ground, lest he should give an heir to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, therefore he killed him also. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah is grown." For he said, "Lest he also die like his brothers." And Tamar went and dwelt in his father's house. Now in the process of the time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died, and Judah was comforted, and went up to his sheep shearers at Tenan, and he said, his friend Hirah, the Adullamite. And it was told Tamar, saying, "Look, at your father-in-law was going up to Timnah to shear sheep." So she took off her widow's garments, covered herself with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place which was on the way to Timnah, for she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given to him as a wife. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot, because she had covered her face. And then he turned to her by the way and said, "Please let me come into you." And for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And so she said, "What will you give me, that you may come into me?" And he said, "I will send a young goat from the flock." So she said, "Will you give me a pledge till you send it?" And then he said, "What pledge shall I give you?" And so she said, "Your signet and your cord and your staff, that is in your hand." And then he gave them to her, and he went into her, and she conceived by him. And so she arose and went away, and laid aside her veil, and put on the garments for her widowhood. And Judah sent the young goat by the hand to his friend the Adullamite, to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he did not find her. And then he asked the men of the place, "Where's the harlot who was openly by the roadside?" And they said, "There was no harlot in this place." And so he returned to Judah and said, "I cannot find her." And also the men of the place said that there was no harlot in this place. Then Judah said, "Let her take them for herself, lest we be shamed. For I sent this young goat, and you have not found her." And it came to pass about 3 months after that, Judah was told, saying, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has played the harlot. Furthermore, she is with child by harlotry." So Judah said, "Bring her out and let her be burned." When she was brought out, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, "By the man to whose these belong, I am with child." And she said, "Please determine whose these are, the signet and the cord and the staff." So Judah acknowledged him, and she said, "She has been more righteous than I, because I did not give her to the Shelah my son." And he never knew her again. Now it came to pass at the time giving birth, that behold, twins were in her womb. And it was then, when she was giving birth, that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took a scarlet thread and bound it on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." And then it happened, as he drew back his hand, and that his brother came out unexpectedly. And she said, "How did you break through this breach to be upon you?" Therefore his name was called Perez. Afterward his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. Chapter 39. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all he did to prosper in his hand. And so Joseph found favor in his sight and served him. And then he made him overseer of his house and all that he had put under his authority. So it was from that time that he had made an overseer of his house and at all that he had. But the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field. Thus he had left all of that he had in Joseph's hand, and he did not know what he had to expect for the bread which he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Look, my master does not know what it is with me in the house, and that he has committed all that he has to my hand. There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and a sin against God?" So it was as she spoke to Joseph day by day, that he did not heed her, to lie with her or to be with her. But it happened about this time, when Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was inside, that she caught him by his garment, and saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in his hand, and fled and ran outside. And so it was, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, that she called to the men of the house and spoke to them, saying, "See, he has brought unto us a Hebrew to mock us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And it happened, when he heard that I had lifted my voice and cried out, and he left his garment with me and fled outside. So she kept his garment with her until his master came home. And then she spoke to him with words like these, saying, "The Hebrew servant who you brought to us came in to me to mock me. So it happened, as I lifted my voice and cried out, and that he left his garment with me and fled outside. So it was when his master heard the words which his wife spoke to him, saying, Your servant did to me after this manner, and that his anger aroused. And then Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison, whatever they did there, and it was his doing. The keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper. Chapter 40. It came to pass after these things that the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their lord and the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief butler and the chief baker. So he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard in the prison, the place where Joseph was confined. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. So they were in custody for a while. And then the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, had a dream, both of them, each man's dream, one night, and each man's dream with its own interpretation. And Joseph came into them in the morning, and looked at them and saw that they were sad. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in the custody of his lord's house, saying, Why do you look so sad today? And they said to him, We each had a dream, and there is no interpreter for it. So Joseph said to them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me, please. And then the chief butler told his dream in the house. And behold, in my dream a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches, and it was though it were budded. Its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. Then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said to him, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Now within 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your place, and you will be put Pharaoh's cup in his hand according to the former manner when you were his butler. But remember me when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me, and make mention of me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this place, out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and also I have done nothing here that they should put me into the dungeon. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph, I also was in my dream, and there were 3 white baskets in my head, and in the upper basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head. So Joseph answered and said, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh from you. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and the chief baker among his servants. And then he restored the chief butler to his butlership again, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. I have read from you from the first book of Moses, Genesis chapter 38 through 40.